The fun part about risk analysis is we start thinking about how the cobbler's kids have no shoes.
Yeah.
So everybody else has risks except for us.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
when was the last time you did a risk analysis on your own company? And then we hear people complain all the time, like, why am I always in firefighting mode? There's always operational issues going on. I'm constantly like putting up with tickets, and there's always something going on. And it's because you haven't done a risk analysis on your own shop.
Yep, that's it.
And I love the phrase, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. You're
Now,
making
hold
shoes
on.
for everybody else, so you don't take care of your own.
Yes.
And
Now,
there's
risk
nothing more
analysis. Hang
true
on.
than in IT.
Yeah, y'all listen to Adam here. He's saying risk analysis, and some of you are already thinking a penetration test. All right, hang on to that. All right, because that's not the direction we're going.
It is not. And in security, they always talk about the penetration and vulnerabilities and vulnerability testing are two different things. Risk analysis is a whole nother bear as well. And to fit it into how to get out of firefighting mode, something that a lot of MSPs desperately want, you have to sit down and identify what is going wrong right now and why am I constantly in firefighting mode. Maybe it's you don't have enough personnel, so you need to streamline your operations. You need to get your OML to OML level 4 so that you're not you have more personnel free. You need to automate more sequences. You need to you don't have your clients just aren't accepting your proposals, so they're all on old technology. It's like, again, cobbler's kids have no shoes. If you look at an IT person's computer, how old is it? Is it the latest and greatest? Is it following the 3-year guidelines of rotation for laptops? I'm willing to bet not.
Nope.
Looking down at my PC, looking at my Frankenstein, said, "Oh, I'll just upgrade the RAM. I don't need a new PC.
Nope.
My PC doesn't even have a warranty. Heck, the company that made it isn't even in business anymore." So, when you look at your risks in your company, a lot of MSPs know what their risks are, kind of. When was the last time you sat down as a group and said, okay, what is going on with us today? Is we are constantly doing break fix tickets with clients. We're bouncing from client to client to client to client, and we're constantly fixing and patching issues. Why is that? Well, and then you go down the list.
Yep.
Now, is this a threat to your income?
Absolutely.
And the answer may be yes. We're going to lose clients if we don't get out of firefighting mode. We got to do more projects. We've got to get ahead of this. And so one of my first tricks I tell people to get out of firefighting mode is one of the hardest. And it's, you got to drop a ball. And there is a good way to drop a ball. There's only so many you can juggle. If you are very talented, you're able to juggle like 30 balls at a time. That's fantastic. It's your OML 5 kind of shops. But you're not there yet. You need to work your way up to that. In order to work your way up to that, you need to practice. You need to do some exercises. You need to improve your processes. But you can't improve your processes if you're constantly trying to juggle 5 to 20 balls. So you've got to drop a couple. Now, you can drop a couple easily, and it's painful, but you have to tell your clients, you have to manage expectations with them and say, hey, look, our SLAs are getting extended out to a week now because we are down a person.
Yep. Yeah, there's a couple of ways to do this. You're right, and Skip and all of his stories. I tried this one time, and I didn't drop the ball very effectively, and it caused lots of other problems. But this, evaluation of your organization, you are going to have to take a step back. You are going to have to do something different. If you're struggling in firefighting mode today and you don't want to be in that mode tomorrow, you're going to have to do something different. So, and that's just, there's no other way around it. You can't wait for this magical opportunity that in the back of our minds, there's always some small hope. Tomorrow, next week's going to be better. Nothing's going to break, in the first week of August, and I'll be able to get on top of all this stuff. That's not going to happen, right? So you are going to have to take a step back. You do need to take an evaluation, and it may be you extend SLAs. it may be that you go out and look and you find your single noisiest client, and it may be someone that you really, really like. Maybe you worked hard to get that business, and you look at that and you have a couple options. I mean, you can either double down on your efforts, proactive efforts to reduce the noise, or this is a really unpopular opinion, but it may work. You may have to ring this client up and go, Mr. Customer, I'm sorry, I can't support you anymore. And that's a bad place. That's an extreme example, I think, because I've been part of the sales process, and I don't want to let go of any of that business that we worked so hard for. But if it's jeopardizing all your other business, if it's jeopardizing the profitability of your company, you're going to have to look at something and say, I'm going to have to make a decision here. I'm going to have to do something different.
Something has to change.
Yeah.
And I think it's, was it the pain of staying the same has to override the pain of change.
There we go. Yeah.
And that's how you develop. Eventually, you got to look at the risks in your company and say, if I stay like this, I'm going to go out of business. Now, you don't want to get into that place, but as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, that's constantly a good question to ask yourself. If I do this, am I going to run out? Am I running a cash flow deficit because I am trying to be all things to all people? So you may have to do what Skip said and walk into a client and say, I am not big enough to handle you right now. So either we need to change our SLAs or I need to help you find another MSP.
Yep.
And you offload that client so you can get into a healthy place. And that's okay, but you have to identify that risk so that you can overcome it or go out of business. Now, you may say, well, I don't have enough customers. I need more customers. Well, in that case, you're probably not in firefighting mode. You're probably in boredom mode, which is a completely different risk. This podcast is all about how to get out of firefighting mode, not how to get new clients. And with firefighting mode, usually you're just hopping from problem to problem to problem. You can't get it done. So I'll use an example from managed services platform. We have an API on the back end. And when one of the companies upgraded their API, it kind of threw us into a little bit of turmoil. So we upgraded with them and made sure we followed the best practices and everything. And it caused a bit of issues. And so we sat back and go, well, crap, why is it doing all these? Well, it just turns out that, the way we were doing it and the way they were doing it, it was just an old fashioned way of doing it. And okay, so we actually need to rebuild and containerize our API calls. But in order to do that, I need my developer to work on the new shiny, the new good way of doing it and let the bugs hang out there. So every time he does a bug fix on the old system, he's delaying the new stuff. And so we have to set that expectation. I know Skip is getting tired of it, but what he has to do is he has to set the expectation. Hey, look, you know what? We're building a new container that's going to solve all these problems all at once. So if you guys can just live with these bugs for a few months, we're going to launch this in late Q3, and all these problems go away.
Yeah.
And
that's a hard spot
much
to be
more
in.
manageable.
Yeah.
And that's what we call managing. So I'm dropping a ball. We are dropping the bug fixes. Unless it's a critical bug, we're dropping it. Yep. And we're saying, hey, customer, we can't get to this right now, or we're choosing not to get to this now so that we can make a better experience for you later. And an MSP can do the same thing. Hey, you know what? We're going to be a little slower on tickets this week. And you've done this in the past. Hey, it's holiday weekend. We're going to be a little slower on tickets. And everybody seems to understand. Yep. You can say, hey, you know what? We are down to tech. Just let everybody know we're gonna be extending our SLAs by 1 day in this emergency situation while we hire new personnel. Or hey, we're gonna get ahead on some projects and we're gonna reset up and mitigate this risk. While we're doing this, customers know that we're gonna be a little slower. And the reason why we say that is we're resetting expectations so that the client understands. Clients don't mind you dropping a ball if they're forewarned.
Yeah.
Hey, we're not going to be around on Monday because it's a holiday. No one seems to care because a lot of times the client isn't in business either. But if you say, hey, on Wednesday, Joe is out of office because of a funeral or because his kid is graduating from school and really wants to go, oh, awesome. The client understands, and that's that empathy. And you can do the same thing in firefighting mode when you identify a risk. This is the reason why we're constantly in firefighting mode. We're not getting ahead because we really need to do this thing. So you got to clearly say to your client, hey, I need to do this thing with you guys. Otherwise, we're going to keep doing tickets and it's going to cost you a ton of money. So if you can give us $10,000, this problem goes away. But if you keep doing this, we cannot handle your level of support and we're going to have to move you to a new client. That's risk analysis. You've got to decide, is this customer worth keeping on? Is this problem worth dealing? And if you want to get out of it, you got to say, this is what it's going to cost to get out of it. And the ROI will happen in 6 months or whatever.
Yep. And that's really important. The communication, obviously, well, it's across the board. I guess there's not one point that's really obvious. So that communication is going to happen internally with, your executive team. Maybe it's just the two of you, maybe it's just you, and you need to clearly understand, and not a feeling or a gut reaction sort of response. You need to clarify that. But then you've got an internal team that you're working with. You've got staff that's in charge of implementing this. And then you've got the customer component. And, while Adam and I are talking through this, in this example with managed services platform and our container, that all sounds great. That's a couple of guys on a podcast just talking. But hey, I'm the guy that's actually on the calls with our customers having to talk this out. I totally get this. And to get here,
we run a company too, people.
That's it. To get to this point where we can effectively do this, we've got to communicate. Adam can't leave me in the dark on what's going on here, and leave me flopping around in front of the clients going, I'm working, and all this stuff. I've got to be able to
on the table. It's coming. It's coming.
Yes.
That's the worst case scenario, people.
It is. So, we get through this and we see the better. So the communication key in all this is really important. So you can't leave out any one element. And in any of these processes where you say, hey, we're going to drop this ball, we're going to postpone this, we're going to put this on pause, whatever it is, we've got, so obviously we talk with members all over the world and the staffing challenges are global. And so I'm talking with one of our members the other day, and he's really struggling with, the level of support that he's able to provide his clients. And one of the keystones of his business has always been that local, hands-on, very personable touch. And he can't find the resources. He can't find the people. Now, he knows he can outsource some of this stuff, but that kind of breaks a business model that he's had. And so he's in this decision point. Do I change a fundamental way that I do my business? Or essentially, he's kind of pondering, do I go out of business? And sometimes you have to make those hard choices, but he's working through it methodically. He's very analytical. I have to kind of push him a little bit, but he's going to be able to clearly understand what this is. And the outcome of that is going to be clear communication about how to go forward.
Yeah. And that's risk analysis. What is hurting your bottom line? What is hurting your revenue streams? It's not so much about where the biggest cyber threat is, where the biggest vulnerability is. What is your cyber portfolio? Are you running multi-factor? Those are all great things that we'll handle later. But right now, you've got to understand what is hurting your bottom line and what's keeping you in that firefighting mode. Firefighting mode isn't a bad thing if you're making money off of it. If you're a break-fix shop that's getting paid per ticket, man, firefighting mode is fantastic. You're just spending cash at that point in time.
Yeah.
There's no big deal. Just keep jumping from ticket to ticket because you're making money. And you might have to change your business model because of that. If you'd see like, hey, we're in firefighting mode. We're constantly jumping from client to client to client and fix. And that's where you're happy and you like being this way. Change your model to be transactional. Change your model so that is how you charge and you can stay there. If you want to get out of firefighting mode and get into project mode where you're getting ahead of problems, that requires foresight and planning. And when you do that, you have to take time to do it. And my number one tip to everybody always, if you listen to this podcast long enough, you've heard me tell this, you have to create a buffer for yourself in
Yes.
everything you do. A
Yes.
20% buffer. For me, it's Friday afternoons. Friday afternoons, I take off because sometimes I need I need the extra 4 hours of my week. So I pretend like they don't exist most weeks. You try to book me on a Friday afternoon, you will find my schedule full.
Yep.
And that's because sometimes I have to get something done before the end of the week. It's a piece of paperwork, it's administrative activities, or maybe one of our members is having a really hard time and they need my advice. I have that afternoon open for that situation. And because I allow that, I don't create this pile of things that I had to move around to make time for these emergencies. I have an emergency block in my schedule. And when you start changing your mentality to that, things start getting nice. You get out of firefighting mode and you get into planning mode because you always have 4 hours a week where you can sit back and think. And it's the same reason why you have all your great ideas in the shower, because you don't have your phone on you and you're
That's
not
right.
distracted, or that moment right before you fall asleep, because you're not distracted and your brain isn't full. You're like, oh, I should do this. And that's how you do risk analysis. You need that time where you sit back and just chew on your business, but with the deliberate intent of saying, where are my risks affecting my revenue streams so that I can get rid of them?
Yep. So firefighting mode, I think we all, agree. And like and said, unless you're one of those companies that's making money, your business model is designed around firefighting mode. For everyone else, we know it's not the place we want to be. It's a struggle, right? But many of you out there are really good at it. I mean, you've become comfortable in dealing with it. You know it's a problem, but it never gets to be a disastrous problem because somehow or another you always seem to pull it out at the last minute. You've got brilliant people working for you that they're dedicated, they're ready to put in, the night shift if you need to. You always seem to recover. So I'm going to, we laugh about my skipisms pretty often. So I'm going to bring one out that I haven't probably told before because Skip kind of likes dark humor sometimes. So I have a couple of them that aren't quite so cheerful. And so I've got one that I laugh at anyway, but it's remember, as bad as things are, they can always be worse. All right. And that's, and so you're looking at everything in firefighting mode and you're like, yeah, this is not great. We're not making as much money as I want. I'm working more hours than I want, but you get over it. All right. But what happens if next week half of your clients get hit with some 0-day threat? All right. And now you've got half of your revenue at risk. Half of your clients can't get their jobs done. All right. You've just gone from firefighting mode to disaster mode. Are you going to be able to handle that? What's that going to do to your organization? And many organizations can't handle that. We've worked with a few members over the years who have had those sort of events happen, whether it was within their internal company or a broad swipe of their clients' companies. And those are hard situations to recover from. And not every organization makes it out of those disaster modes. So if you don't have a buffer in there, you really need to worry about Skip's silly little skipism that says, as bad as it is, it can always get worse.
That is true. And again, that's why you have to stop and say risk. If this thing happens, what do I do? And those are good tabletop exercises to happen. If you guys have like the bandwidth in your day to do tabletops, those are great. When you do a risk analysis and say, hey, everybody sits down at a table, your key people in your MSP. You all sit down, you have a box of donuts, everybody's favorite soda, and you say, all right, everybody has an envelope in front of them. I've created a scenario.
Yes.
Our biggest client, and they open it up, and it's the biggest client has left because they had a 0-day and it locked them out of all our systems. You spent 3 weeks and you got them back up and running, but now they're gone. Yep. They picked a new MSP because they don't trust you anymore. What is our response? And you go around the table and you work the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's a tabletop. So when you've identified a risk, there's a whole bunch of things you can do. But if you don't know what you don't know, then it's going to become a fire.
Yes.
And the fire will burn in the back until it gets out of hand. But if you can identify that fire early on, you can deal with it either via a tabletop. You can sit down and say, if this were to occur, here's our plan, and let's move forward. And you're so good at doing this with your clients, you know that if a virus hit your client, you've got a series of steps you go through to deal with it.
Yep.
You need to do the same thing with your business risk and identify what is going on with my business, what are my big threats, and what are we going to do about it so that we can get out of firefighting mode. You keep doing this, you keep getting ahead of these things, and it takes you like an hour a week, maybe at most, as a CEO, as the person running your MSP, of sitting down, identifying what are the biggest threats to my company and what can I do about them, or at least just listing them.
Yes.
So that you know what they are. And if you see one we know this risk is getting out of hand, e.g., if our tickets get over 1,000 a week, then we know it's out of hand. We cannot close that many. We know that if our SLAs get beyond 3 days, then we're out of hand. Like, we need to fix that. So these are your KPIs that you should be looking at every week. And I'm talking weekly, people. And so, Skip and I, we have our 90 that we go through every Tuesday, and it's got our KPIs in it. Our big risk identifiers are tied to a scorecard number because we're an EOS shop. And we know that if it dips below this, it turns red and we have to deal with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, okay, we need to talk about this now. Now, if we didn't do that on a weekly basis, some of these things could have dipped down and been like, oh my gosh, that's been going on for months. What are we going to do about that? Oh, let's run a campaign. Let's do something really interesting. Let's call up our clients and touch base with them, see what's going on. If we didn't do that, then all of a sudden we have clients dropping, or clients are all mad, or revenue has dropped and we don't know why. Now we're in firefighting mode. We got to put this fire out. It's gotten out of control. But by watching our scorecards every week and dealing with our risks every week for at least 1 hour, we keep on top of this and we keep growing instead, because we're able to put out little fires here and there before they become big fires that we constantly deal with. So if you're stuck in firefighting mode right now, you feel like you're bouncing from problem to problem to problem, it's probably because you've never done a risk analysis or not doing enough risk analysis on your company often enough so that you can mitigate things and keep things going better. So identify a risk, tie a number to it. If things get above this is where we need to worry, and then work the problem. Spend some time working the problem. If that means you need to drop a ball, drop a ball. That means, hey, customer, I'm not going to get to you faster enough because we are fixing something bigger that's going to help everybody out long term.
Yeah. Well, and let me give you a little bit of, optimism here, now to kind of recover from my dark Skipism. So if you go through like these tabletop exercises, and work through a few cycles of these, picking a couple of things, get a little bit of familiarity with this process, and then turn it around and do it with your clients. There's an additional line item there, and a very valuable one. And you can go to your clients and say, Mr. Customer, we've been doing these exercises for risk analysis on our business processes in the past. We think this is really valuable. Would you like us to sit down with you? And obviously it's going to be technology focused, but you sit down with the clients and you say, we're going to do a tabletop exercise. We'll run it for you. We'll talk through your team about what would happen if some technology event, it may be totally out of your hands. Maybe it's solar flares. All right. Who knows? But you can walk through these exercises with your clients to help them uncover the critical areas of their business, and you can charge for that. So there's an upsell here to this. As you get better, you can move in those directions with your clients.
Yeah. And my final thought here, just to close out this podcast, is if you're able to identify your own risks and you're able to get out of the firefighting mode yourself, you can do what just Skip and I just did with you guys. We can relate.
Yes.
We can talk about, hey, here's how we got out of this mode. We had this situation happen with our backend API calls, and we're digging out, and here's how we dropped a ball. And here's how we moved forward to get out of the firefighting mode. And then you can talk to your clients when you do risk analysis and you identify something large. You can say, hey, we had this similar situation happen at internally with our company, and here's how we got out of it. And if we hadn't done that, it would have been a massive problem come 2020. And so that relatability will also help you sell your risk analysis and your recommendations. When the client can see that you did this and this affected you personally and you have a personal story to go with this, then they're more likely to empathize and buy into the project. It's not something that the cobbler is building you shoes. He's building you the shoes that he's wearing.
Yeah.
And that is a big selling point. Drinking your own Kool-Aid, whatever you want to call it. But if you're able to do business analysis on yourself, you're able to do it with your clients and empathize with them better, and they will empathize with you. And that empathy builds for higher perceived value and longer term relationships. And your internal staff will also learn how to do this. But you've got to do it yourself. Get out of firefighting mode by identifying your own risk, spending time every week doing this. So your action item is once a week, 1 hour, identify risks, deal with the risks, and move on. And this continues our quarter on risk analysis. If you need more, come into a community update, or you can just check out the next podcast. I don't know. I don't have my podcast list in front of me, but I think next week we're probably going to be talking about a little bit more about the difference between vulnerability analysis and penetration testing. I think it's a great topic that needs to be handled, because everybody gets confused, just like they do with risk analysis and cybersecurity. It's cybersecurity is a subset of risk analysis. Yes. Vulnerability and pen testing are two different things with two different purposes and two different results. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.